Live from Washington, D.C., Sekulow Live. Phone lines are open for your questions right now.
Hey folks, this is Jordan Sekulow. We have a special broadcast for you today. My dad was recently at Judson University in Illinois, where he gave a speech to the students and staff at the university and went through the history of the American Center for Law and Justice, some of the work we've done in the past and the work that we're doing today, and told his unique story as well. So we thought this would be interesting and something great for you to experience as well, and for a speech that you needed to hear. So we put together a special broadcast for you. Let's go to that speech now.
I appreciate being invited back. My world's changed a little bit over the last 3 or 4 months. I make the statement that I get to argue cases at the Supreme Court of the United States, which is something when I think about where I came from. And I talk about that, about my grandfather. And by the way, I am now a grandfather. And my wife, I will say, the grandmother of my grandchildren is here, Pam, who's the best grandmother I know. An incredible wife. And we've got grandkids. We got 4 grandkids. I got a grandson that's almost age 5, the king of the castle, I call him, and then twin granddaughters, and then a younger granddaughter who's just about 5 months younger than the twins. And my father told me this years ago, that when you have grandchildren, it kind of changes your perspective on a lot of things. Now, you all aren't thinking about grandchildren right now, but you're thinking about the country and the world you're going to grow up in. And it's a very complicated place. Much more complicated than when we were growing up. The level of hostility towards what we would call democratic values, liberty, freedom, religious freedom, the ability to engage the political process. We have it in the United States, but in a large part of the world they don't. And it's constantly under attack. But you know, I've had over the last 3 months, so as I said, I got to argue at the Supreme Court of the United States, which is a pretty great thing, and I've argued at the International Criminal Court in The Hague, and I've had all these great experiences, but most recently, I had the opportunity to represent a well-known client. And the well-known client is the President of the United States. I want to talk about that for a minute. Because I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, a libertarian, or you just don't care politically. As a lawyer, when you're asked to defend an institution, and that's what you're defending when you're defending a president, your obligation, that's what we do. By the way, doesn't mean you agree with every position or every statement or every document or every policy position. But what's your job as the counsel? Well, ultimately, you're defending the Constitution of the United States. Again, what are you trying to defend? The right for the 3 branches of government to operate in a way that the founders intended. But let me tell you something about the founders. They were not perfect. I mean, after all, we have in our documents, you know, all men are created equal, yet we had slavery. They were not perfect. It took a long time to work through these issues. But how many of you students think the political process and the engagement back and forth is really pretty aggressive? If you think it's pretty aggressive, do you think it's not aggressive enough? Because if you think it's aggressive right now, let me read you something from the University of Virginia. This is before, oh my goodness, before electricity, let alone before, before Twitter, before 1794 to 1797, Thomas Jefferson operated as the informal leader of what would become the nation's first opposition political party. The name of that party, by the way, was the Democratic Republicans. This party vocally challenged Alexander Hamilton's political views. How many of you have seen or read the play Hamilton? What do you think? You like it? So Hamilton wrote most of the Federalist Papers, which is kind of how the Constitution is to be interpreted. It was a great play, by the way. But it was interesting to me how the media kind of picked up on it, not realizing that the real conservative in that movement was Alexander Hamilton. But here's what happened. So you had the Democratic Republicans were the opposition party. Washington decides not to run for a third term because in those days you could keep running. He decided not to run for a third term in 1796, mostly due to health and his decision that he didn't want to be perceived as a king. Jefferson allowed his name to be nominated by a caucus of Democratic Republican leaders who were against John Adams, who was the vice president under George Washington. As was, this is from the University of Virginia, the aristocratic custom of the day, neither Adams nor Jefferson personally campaigned for the presidency of the United States. It was beneath them to actually campaign. Rather, the campaign battles were waged between the political parties' newspapers, Facebook, Twitter of their day, social media. This was a propaganda device, according to the University of Virginia, rooted in the anti-British pamphlets of the American Revolution, which were pretty aggressive to say the least. These publications, without mercy, criticized their respective opposing candidates. Without mercy. So understand that the political debate and the political process and the political harshness and the tone and the angst you sometimes see in the debates and, again, whatever political party you're on, that is the United States of America. This is not new, okay? This is what freedom means. This is what liberty means.
Folks, right now at the American Center for Law and Justice, we have a matching challenge where anything you're able to donate is effectively doubled. A small donation, $5, becomes $10 to the American Center for Law and Justice, and it goes up from there. Larger donations as well. If you would like to be part of our matching challenge and support the work of the ACLJ, call now. The toll-free number is 1-877-989-2255. That's 877-989-2255. You can also make that donation online at aclj.org.
It is a critical time for our nation, and the American Center for Law and Justice is on the front lines, defending life and liberty, engaging the issues that matter most to you and your family. Whether it's working to protect Americans from the dangers of radical Islam and the persecution of Christians, to defending life at the U.S. Supreme Court, to protecting your religious and constitutional freedoms, we could not do this work without you, without your support. And now your support can really make a tremendous difference. For a limited time, you can participate in the ACLJ Matching Challenge. If you make a gift now, it will be doubled. $25 becomes $50. A $100 gift becomes $200. Please stand with the ACLJ right now and call 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or go online at aclj.org. Thank you for your support.
The freedom of speech, the ability to criticize those you disagree with. How do you handle speech in the United States of America that you disagree with? With more speech. I disagree with this person's position. Rather than shouting them down, which you even have a right to shout, you understand that, right? I mean, you can picket and protest. I defend those rights. Oh my goodness, I've defended those rights for 3 decades. I can say now 4 decades. Didn't do it in a long time. You have the right to do that. But that's what freedom of speech means. You don't, and this is true in a lot of places in our society right now. The way to handle speech you disagree with is not to shut down the speaker, is to engage in a conversation so that you could air out your differences. And you may not agree, by the way. And that's where elections come in. Elections have consequences. So when it comes to speech, the reason the founders wanted that protected from the government was because they didn't want a situation where the government would tell you what you should say, when you should say it, and how you can say it. And they also didn't want the government to be in a position to do what? To tell you how to think. And you're in a great college, a great university, learning how to think. Let me tell you something. I went to law school. In law school, you know what they're really teaching you for 3 years? You got to do a lot of memorizing of rules and statutes and contracts and how it works. But you know what they really are teaching you? How to think. How do you think? And how you think is very important. So we start with the premise of the First Amendment freedom of speech, celebrating Constitution Day, Constitution Week. Freedom of speech. But they didn't stop at freedom of speech. You have to look at the First Amendment in its totality. So you have freedom of speech, and then what? Freedom of the press. Now, freedom of the press was very important to our founders because they loved using I just read you. They loved the press. They loved utilizing print media. That's what they had in those days. To what? Convey a message. And then the other side would have, they had political newspapers. That's what they said. So look, this is the nature of a constitutional republic. Do we live in a democracy? We live in a constitutional republic, and there is a distinction. We don't just have, it's not simple majority rule. We have 3 distinct branches of government. We have a House and a Senate. We have the executive branch, the presidency, the judicial branch, the judges. I spend most of my time. But the idea of a free press, which has received protection, we're unique in the world in that regard. We have freedoms of speech and freedom of the press that other countries envy because they can't get it through their system that way. They don't have the constitutional framework. Our founders were brilliant in looking forward. But part of freedom of the press also includes, in freedom of the speech, and the First Amendment includes the freedom of association. Your ability to associate with people you agree with, to form a collective, to convey a message. That could be your church group. That could be a group for social justice. It could be anything like that. We do a lot of work overseas, a tremendous amount of work overseas. And especially for Christians being persecuted for their faith in the Middle East. It's a horrific situation. We've got ancient Christian communities that have been almost completely annihilated. But citizens here in the United States and abroad have banded together under this freedom that we take for granted, this freedom of association, that allows us not to just individually express our ideas and values and views, but to do it collectively. So that what? So that with more people engaged, your voice is amplified. And that's the beauty and the importance of the freedom of association, the freedom of the press, the freedom of speech. They're distinct freedoms, but they all tend to work together. I'm going to save the religion clauses because I want to talk about another one. And that is our founders put in the First Amendment your right to petition your government for the redress of a grievance. The right to petition the government for a redress of a grievance. So what does that mean? That means if there is an action taken by your government that you disagree with, you can literally petition that government, both in what we would call petitions, actual petitions with we, the undersigned, have this position. And because of freedom of association, we don't have to do it individually. We could sign one petition and submit it to our legislative bodies, to our president, to our local governments. the ability to petition the government for the redress of grievance, do you know how foreign that was in the days of our founders? I mean, they had left Great Britain for what? Why was the main break with Great Britain? Well, you think you could petition a grievance? We did petition a grievance with the king. It was called the Declaration of Independence. Because you're not allowed to do that. So in colonial times, the idea that you would petition the king, hey, King George, you passed a couple of bills we don't like. So we are collectively meeting together, and we are going to petition you for a change in those laws. Our founders did that in the Declaration of Independence. If you haven't read it, read it. It is a petition. They lay out the charges. So the Declaration of Independence actually established our independence. The Constitution is the bylaws, if you will, of how the government is to operate. But again, you need to look at all these documents and the collective of what was going on. So the Declaration of Independence itself, and this to me is what's so critical, established this ability to go to the king and say, we know we may end up in a war over this, but it's so important to us as a people, because of our ability to associate together, that we're willing to risk our lives, our fortunes, and sacred honor to stand for liberty and freedom.
Folks, right now at the American Center for Law and Justice, we have a matching challenge where anything you're able to donate is effectively doubled. A small donation, $5, becomes $10 to the American Center for Law and Justice, and it goes up from there. Larger donations as well. If you would like to be part of our matching challenge and support the work of the ACLJ, call now. The toll-free number is 1-877-989-2255. That's 877-989-2255. You can also make that donation online at aclj.org.
It is a critical time for our nation, and the American Center for Law and Justice is on the front lines, defending life and liberty, engaging the issues that matter most to you and your family. Whether it's working to protect Americans from the dangers of radical Islam and the persecution of Christians, to defending life at the U.S. Supreme Court, to protecting your religious and constitutional freedoms, we could not do this work without you, without your support. And now your support can really make a tremendous difference. For a limited time, you can participate in the ACLJ Matching Challenge. If you make a gift now, it will be doubled. $25 becomes $50. A $100 gift becomes $200. Please stand with the ACLJ right now and call 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or go online at aclj.org. Thank you for your support.
There was a nominee to the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. It made a lot of news, which, by the way, covers Illinois. And she's a professor at Notre Dame University. Her name is Professor Barrett. Well-published, well-known. A member of the United States Senate, during her confirmation hearing, said, you know, you're a devout Catholic, and I'm concerned about that. This is from the United States Senator. She said, it appears to me, based on what you've read, what you've written, and what you've said, that the dogma lives deep within you, which I thought sounded like something out of, from Yoda from Star Wars. The dogma is deep within you. But they said this seriously. And how can we let you become a judge if your faith actually impacts how you think? And the answer to that is the Constitution. By the way, we have a clause in the Constitution that says there's no religious oath to be serving in government, which means we don't say you have to be a Christian, you have to be Jewish, you have to be Muslim, Buddhist. We say there's no religious oath, no religious obligation to serve in government. But that does not mean the converse, that if you do have a faith, that you're eliminated from serving in government. So in 2017, think about this. In 2017, a member of the United States Senate is asking a Court of Appeals nominee if her faith really matters to her. Because it appears that it does, and that's a concern to her. Now, I want you to put yourself in that judge's spot and think about, how would you respond? In other words, how would you engage? How would you individually engage a United States senator? Have you ever watched those hearings on TV, the confirmation hearings? Let me tell you something. In your political science class, they should have you do that. Because, I've done those hearings. And they're pretty intense. But just think about this for a moment. I think this judge is in her early 40s. Published brilliantly. Well-respected academic. People on the left and the right think she'll be a very fair and good judge. But in 2017, her faith has become an issue in her nomination to the Court of Appeals. And I think, to me, that's really tragic. Doesn't mean, by the way, that the question could not be asked. Because of our other freedoms, senators can ask those questions. The question is, how do you respond? How would you respond? What would you say if someone said to you, and you're applying for a position, does your faith matter? Does it affect how you think? Does it affect how you will do your job? Or if you're a student applying for a program in physical therapy in Maryland, at one of the major colleges, and you have a 4.0 grade point average from high school and you scored great on the SAT, which I did not, but this guy did. He was asked in his interview. It's a program where you not only apply, you have to be interviewed to be accepted into the physical therapy program of this major university. And the admissions officer asked him, what is the thing that is most important to you? And he said, my faith. And the admission officer said, well, what is your faith? He said, I'm a Christian. Didn't say he was Baptist, didn't say he was Methodist, Catholic. He said, I'm a Christian. Oh, okay. He was denied admission to the program. What's so ironic in these cases is they will put this in writing. Interviewed student, faith is an issue for him, should not be admitted to program. You know what? I don't like that. I've been practicing law a long time, almost 40 years. I don't like that. So we filed a lawsuit. It's a 19-year-old young person who was in shock that he was not being admitted to this major program because he was a Christian in 2015. So why should we be shocked in 2017 that a senator is asking a judge, a judicial nominee, if their religion matters? Look, at the end of the day, let me tell you what matters. Your faith. Okay? You can hear a lot about politics is important. Abraham Kuyper, well-known Dutch theologian, brilliant theologian. He said politics is important. And my goodness, I spend a lot of my life dealing with the political process, right? He said politics is important, but remember this, politics never raised anybody from the dead. Let me say it again. He said politics is really important. You should engage in the political process. You should be part of the political process. But remember this, politics never raised anyone from the dead. And no, I want you to think about what that means. Let's think about what that means. Politics never raised anybody from the dead. But we know who did and who does. And at the end of the day, that's what's the most important. So when our founders enshrined in the Constitution this concept of religious freedom, religious liberty, The idea that Congress shall pass no law establishing a religion. Which, by the way, in our early founding didn't prohibit the states from establishing religions, and they did. And that didn't work out too well. So eventually, about 150 years later, the court said, well, government should not be establishing religion. We don't have a Church of the United States. There is a Church of England. Still is a Church of England. We don't have a Church of the United States because we believe in freedom of conscience and freedom of liberty and freedom of speech and freedom of the press and the free exercise of religion. So you have both the free exercise of religion. Congress will pass no law prohibiting the free exercise of religion or establishing religion, right? And so we don't let a government establish religion, but we don't let the government interfere with the free exercise of religion. And what does that free exercise of religion mean? That means you and you and you, and you over there and you up there can believe what you want to believe in a country that, at least constitutionally, is not supposed to be able to punish you for your faith.
Folks, I'm glad that you were able to see those remarks by our chief counsel, my dad, Jay Sekulow at Judson University. I want to remind you that we have a matching challenge right now where anything you're able to donate to the American Center for Law and Justice is effectively doubled. If you can be part of that matching challenge, I encourage you to call now. The toll-free number to make your donation is 877-989-2255. That's 877-989-2255. You can also donate online at ACLJ.org.
It is a critical time for our nation, and the American Center for Law and Justice is on the front lines, defending life and liberty, engaging the issues that matter most to you and your family. Whether it's working to protect Americans from the dangers of radical Islam and the persecution of Christians, to defending life at the U.S. Supreme Court, to protecting your religious and constitutional freedoms, we could not do this work without you, without your support. And now your support can really make a tremendous difference. For a limited time, you can participate in the ACLJ Matching Challenge. If you make a gift now, it will be doubled. $25 becomes $50. A $100 gift becomes $200. Please stand with the ACLJ right now and call 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255, or go online at aclj.org. Thank you for your support.